Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat as we are about to start another insightful session, the future of regulatory landscape locally and globally. Please welcome on stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for the welcome and for having us here. I'm Evdokia. I'm coming from SALVUSFunds. We are based in Cyprus, and we cater for licensing, regulatory compliance, internal audits in all verticals, including brokerages, investment firms, payments, crypto licenses. And I'm happy to share more insights within this panel of updates and what's going on around.
Thank you, thank you. So this panel is a good opportunity to test the pulse of the regulatory landscape. So we do it here, at least in Asia, once a year. Every year, there are some new changes introduced by lawmakers and regulators. However, some of these new regulations are welcome, and some other, they tend to complicate a bit too much the life for CFD brokers and also crypto providers. So I wanted to ask you, what are your views in this, particularly if you can mention a specific case of regulation that in a good way or in a bad way or both has affected your company or the service you provide to your clients in the compliance space? Maybe starting, yes.
Yeah, sure. That's a very interesting question, I will say. Well, licensing, it's always a hot topic in all expos, I will say, because every different period we have new trends and things are changing. Mostly in the CFD brokerages, after, I will say, SVG announcing all the exits of the unregulated brokers, we have helped as SALVUS many brokers going into the regulated space, or they go through the same setup as SVG with St. Lucia, Anguilla, and all of that. However, we see a lot of stands going to the regulated path, and this is mostly from payments. Because if you set up your brokerage anywhere, but you don't have a payment and a banking, then...
maybe let's explain for a second what happened in St. Vincent. For those at January this year, right? They issued this notice. Maybe let's explain for a second what happened.
Yeah.
What was the change? Yes.
Definitely. The change here is that until today, we had SVG catering, let's say, a company, setting up a company, getting a legal opinion over there, and they were operating, in a way, an unregulated business on Forex brokerages. But then the regulator came up and said, if you are dealing with Forex, we want you to ensure that you have one license in the jurisdictions that you are operating. Few firms where they operate globally, they could manage to keep their license giving these letters. However, the majority of the business over there are not there for license from regulations. So they had to find another jurisdictions, or they go through the regulated path. Yes. We have seen both of them. So some people, they still want to do the unregulated path because it's cost-effective for them. But in the long run, if you want to still operate and grow, you have to go through the regulated path. And this is, as I said, mostly for banking, because it's very difficult to get a bank relationship without having a license. And also, if you want to grow as a business, you have to go get a license. You have to show that you are reputable, you are not going to abuse any client's funds, and all of that.
Yeah, I remember, because also my firm dealt a lot with this. One thing that was kind of funny in a bad way was the fact that we were asking to the local regulator, okay, you wrote this notice about Forex. What do you mean by Forex? What is Forex to you? And they were unable completely to answer what Forex was to them. They just said, no, whatever you do that we don't understand, you need to get this license. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. So that's one of the things that occupied most of the last 6 months, I say. Then we have also crypto, which became regulated right now through Europe with the MiCA coming up. Implementation next year, which seems long, but it is not. And for myself, coming from Europe and from Cyprus, I say that CySEC already has the implementation of most of these regulations covering the MiCA. And we already got the registrations for many firms. I say that many global brands already are in Cyprus, including Binance, Revolut, Crypto.com, and all of that. And I will expect, to be honest, to still replicate the brokerage of CySEC success into the crypto space. However, this is a very big subject where we are going to talk about it further even when we go to Cyprus, because we are going to see also the replication maybe from ASIC or from Singapore and other places where they replicate what Europe is doing in a similar way. So we have, in a way, a uniformity of the regulations across the globe, which makes sense. Yeah.
Important right now.
Thank you. Thank you. But correct me if I'm wrong. In most cases, even when, I mean, this is all based on principles. Even when there are these rules that are set, in the end, it's still principles. The real test ultimately is always only when you get the inspection from the regulator, and the regulator says, okay, you did it in a proper way. I'm happy with that, because it depends not only on the systems that you are using, but also on how you made your checks depending on the various jurisdictions you were onboarding from.
Let me, if I can add here, from our point of view, where we deal with these compliance officers, I will say that SAMSAP and all the KYC softwares are in the position to say, we provide all the capabilities, we provide the software, but we require the firm to have the responsibility because they have it. So it is essential to train the compliance officers, the management to use these tools, and especially also the back office, because it's not the AML officer who is actually doing the checks, it's the team in the back office where they are verifying the customers. So they have the responsibility, and then the AML officer has the responsibility to train them, to make the procedures and the guidelines. So I will say it is down to the firm to become educated, of course with the help of the provider, but it's not the provider who is actually going to draw all the lines there, to draft the policies and actually do the checks. And when we come through the inspections, that's the difficult part, where we have the ignorance of what they do, and then they say, let's call the technology provider to guide us, but that's not the idea. You have the obligation. And we see, if I can end that here, we see that in Cyprus and in other jurisdictions, maybe they cannot here, we have a lot of people competent, but we don't see a lot of training for those people in the industry to do the ongoing, which is essential.
That is changing. And to that effect, so talking about offshore, in the last few years, we have seen more and more brokers, even those brands that initially thought that it would be a bit dodgy to go offshore, but now everyone is going offshore, because on one side there is the requirement to onboard international clients in a place where they can offer better conditions compared to the restrictions that they have in-house. But then we see that this is now evolving to a point where not only there is not only just an empty shell there, but there are actually offices and staff offshore. So how do you see this process also from the onshore regulator point of view, seeing these companies onboarding international companies, international clients abroad?
Okay, so I will say it's nothing new in my view, because once there is a regulated broker, they can outsource quite few of the functions. One of the functions is to outsource the technology providers, or they can also outsource some of the functions of customer support. Still, we have a lot of people in the reputable jurisdictions, Cyprus, Australia, Singapore, and all the other places, where we actually have the need to keep the competent staff in terms of, handling the management, the risk management, the compliance, and all of that, which I don't think that they actually outsource it to the other jurisdictions. The persons that they outsource, I can see the need for, let's say, lowering the costs on the customer support side, which will effectively be the replacement of thereafter from the AI. But I don't see the problem here as long as the calls that they make are according to the regulatory provisions and according to the scripts that are approved from the management. I say that there is job for everyone, always, as long as the firm is doing enough to protect the reputation of the firm and the investor protection side, to give them the appropriate advice to their products, to their issues, how to manage the platforms.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Another phenomenon we've been witnessing is the blurring lines between CFD providers and crypto providers, in the sense that there are more and more CFD providers that are adding crypto services, not only in terms of CFDs on cryptos, but now also in terms of actual trading of, so acting as a crypto exchange, or even accepting like USDT payments directly without going through the payment service provider, so through their own e-wallet or as a custodian. And in the same way, we have seen some crypto providers trying to add the CFDs to their own offer. So sometimes with the same brand, with the same company, in order to leverage on their existing brand. However, this sometimes create issues with not only regulators, but also their own providers, as liquidity providers and bank providers, because they consider the two businesses at a different risk ranking. How are you? What are your views on this?
I will say that it's true what you are talking about. Then there is a need for, I will say, adding more products. People get used to CFDs, and the CFD providers, especially now we are running in a low volatility period, so they try to find out what's the next thing. For example, last year, we've seen, last 2-3 years maybe, we've seen a lot of flow of adding products of stocks. It worked out for some others. Now, since we have officially launched products like crypto, and I would say because of the war in Russia as well, crypto are very, very needed. And there is a lot of cost also on charging the cryptos. Since the firms, the CFD providers, they have actually the same people for the same need, why not to have the capabilities to offer them the three verticals, which the three verticals, in my view and experience, are the CFDs, then the cryptos, and also the payments, which that's the most interesting fact here, because we see a couple of good groups now where they are entering the three verticals altogether. And the payments is one of the burdens of the CFD providers. They spend millions on payments. And they think of why to pay these millions on the payments, and since I have the money, not to go and get a license and become now a PSP, I become an EMI, and I serve myself and also get customers, because I'm doing the same branding essentially. And we will have also ending up with the crypto. And from our side, we see these groups getting the 3 licenses. There is a lot of need. Fortunately or not, in Europe, because of EBA and the European Union in general, they are more strict on giving licenses of payments.
Microphone a bit closer.
Yeah. And payments and the EMIs. I understand there is a limitation. Not everyone has to do payments, and the safeguarding is essential for them. So they try to monitoring, and it's not the same of giving license to everybody. But essentially, it's somewhere where we see the expansion of the products into more products of an opportunity and essentially lower cost, because more people entering into having all of those verticals and can justify the lowering cost. More people that will come
Data
there.
laws. So in your own jurisdiction, do you foresee any regulations coming soon specifically about the use of AI in financial services, or do you think that this is still far away to come?
Well, coming from Europe, to be very honest, I'm not aware of such laws. However, I know there is a lot of lobbying about regulating technology providers, which is still under discussions. So from discussions to become a law, we may have like 5-6 years of window to actually materialize this, which from one side, it makes sense. So if I'm a technology provider, I have to kind of being regulated to have certain rules, securities, and all of that. But we have to remember, though, we have also GDPR, which is a very big thing. Many companies were penalized, but from our experience, most of the companies, they are doing nothing about it. And this is where the AI may create more problems in the terms of GDPR. From the other side, AI creates a lot of good capabilities and openings in terms of you can create a better customer servicing, and instead of having people training them to answer questions, you do things automatically and gives accurate answers all the questions instead of trying to figure out whether this is correct.
So
valid,
I just
valid.
wanted to thank all of you for being here today.
We thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.